Hello. Finally.
Are they on the ground floor?
The back of the Imagine the Children's
Cool.
Okay.
Hi everybody. This is the Cozy Conference, and this is Ignite Liverpool. So Ignite runs every quarter-ish. Neil at the back there, who doesn't want any attention at all, runs it almost single-handedly every quarter. And for the last few years, we've brought it here to MakeFest. So we've got a load of stuff lined up for you, which you can't see on the screen behind me because I turned it off very sensibly, of a bunch of different talks about sustainability to begin with, and then after lunch we'll be coming back for medicine and longevity and society and governance, and then at the end of the day, transportation. And the main question we're asking is, what would the world look like in 2049? I thought maybe Neil picked 2049 because it was like some Blade Runner reference, and maybe we were going to have like a guest star from like Harrison Ford or somebody, but no, you're stuck with me. So I'm Zarina, I'm going to be hosting, and we picked 2049 because it's just far enough away that we could take a look at what's happening today in everyday life, or initiatives that are happening around the city and around the world, and use that and the things we learn from it to be able to direct the world within 30 years. That's the plan. So what's the world going to look like in 2049? And before lunch, the things we're going to be talking about is sustainability and the city, and the environment and the place we live. And to begin with, we've got Arthur Rowland, who's going to be talking about the circular economy. Arthur does really amazing stuff with plastic and recycling plastics and all sorts. You may have seen him last weekend at Africa Oye, crunching loads of plastic in very scary looking machines and making really cool, very safe but scary looking machines. And then after Arthur, we've got Pat Link, who runs Makerspace over in Neston, and he's going to be talking again about plastics. And then we've got, rounding it out, Ronnie Hughes, who's going to be talking about utopias, and how we can make our own utopias, which is going to be interesting. So each of them is going to talk for 5 minutes. The structure of Ignite is that you've got an auto-advancing slide deck, 15 slides each. They've got no control over the slides. They put them together, but that's it. And so hopefully all the talks will be 5 minutes long. And then once that's done, we're going to have a Q&A, so feel free to ask some questions. And then we'll wrap up for about 1:45. And then you can come back after lunch for the next set. So are we okay to start? Amazing. So let's kick off with Arthur, and I'll get your slides up, and then you can go.
So it's 15 seconds per slide. I'm going to have to speed up.
Yes.
50%. I thought it was 20.
20.
We'll see how we go.
You're off.
Okay. Are we going?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine it's 2049 and we're at the edge of the world's last landfill, and all of the others have been mined, all the precious materials have been taken out and we've used them. Back to 2019, my name's Arthur Rowland and I'm a waster. I have this sort of pain when I put things in the bin, and that's led to me here today wanting to talk to you about circular economy. But before I go into that, I want to talk about infinity. Now, infinity is is something that we often conflate with big numbers. So if I told you had £40 billion in your current account, you'd feel like you had an infinite amount of money. It's more than you could ever spend. And what's more infinite than sand? So sand is everywhere. Deserts, beaches, rivers, there's loads of it. But if you just imagine for a second one of these ton bags full of sand, that weighs about 2 tons. Now imagine a row of 10 of them that way, a row of 10 of those that way, and then 5 high. That's how much sand we get through in 1 second. So globally we get through 40 billion tons of sand per second, and it's running out. We have limited amount of it. So there's things like sand smuggling and sand dredging, illegal sand trade. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if sand isn't infinite, then nothing's infinite, and the way that we do business and make things now depends on this idea that we can take things infinitely, and which is not the case. So going back to the example of the water bottle in the landfill that I didn't mention earlier, the way that we've come about this is we've taken something from the ground, we've refined it into a kind of plastic that's perfect for bottles, and then we've used it for a bit, and then we've thrown it away where we found it 30 years later in a landfill. So this is the line in linear economy from take, make, use, and waste. So this is how we normally do things. But there is a more sustainable way to do it, which is based around circular systems. So for example, we can drink from a coconut. When we throw that away, it'll get broken down by bugs and microbes, turn into leaf mulch, which can then go into feeding a coconut tree, and then we've gone full circle, coconut to coconut. So that's an example of a material loop. So in the circular economy, everything that we make has inputs that are renewable and outputs that can be understood by other things. So it gets a bit more complicated when we go into a civilized world. Things like smartphones, we can't leave in the bush and expect them to biodegrade, but we can design phones in a circular way. This modular phone is an example where we can do just that. And I also want to talk about two things that you might not anticipate going together, which is fire hose and luxury handbags. This is an example of a company in London who located, they noticed that the fire hoses were being thrown away after they've been in service for a few years, because they're such high pressure that they're thrown away in quite good condition. And what they've found a way to do is to craft new luxury products from that, and they make a lot of profit that way. Another good example of more efficient material use is if you've ever painted a bedroom and used the exact amount of paint, then you're the only person in the world. Everyone else has a little bit left over. What reciprocity do is they mix that paint into a new product. Another example that I've got is a different kind of way of thinking about light. So instead of buying a light bulb, what if you just paid for the light? So Philips offer this trial where you can hire the light, and they look after the manufacture, maintenance, repair, and take back, which makes them much more long-term in their design process. So manufacturers have a huge role to play in making things more circular and more efficient. But what can we do here at MakeFest? We're makers. What can we do? Well, my favourite thing to do, although there's lots that can be done, is around collaboration and creativity. So finding new uses for things and getting a bit messy. So I've got two examples that have come out of Does Liverpool with thanks to Jackie. One is this sheet of 3D printed waste, which we've compressed, and it laser cuts really nicely. And the other is from a waste product of a fermented drink called kombucha, and it works out as this leathery type material. So in summary, to move from the take, make, use, waste model, we've got this huge opportunity to be really creative and find new uses for materials that were previously considered waste. And that to me is exciting. And before I close, I want to give a shout out to the Circular Economy Club, which it's an international thing, but we have a local chapter here, which we organise events and talk about the subject on LinkedIn, so let me know if that's of any interest. Thank you for your time. If you had any circular ideas today, let me know.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well done. You managed to do it in 15 seconds a slide.
I had to shave 5 seconds off every slide.
So later on, if you want to find out the 5 seconds that you missed off each slide, come find Arthur, or maybe you can ask him the questions. Like if there's anything you missed out, we can talk about it afterwards. That was really cool, and one of the things that obviously there's lots of different bits that could make up the circular economy, but one of the biggest problems we've got, as we all know, is plastic. And I think Pat Link is going to be talking about plastic next up. Assuming his mic's on.
Can you hear me? Yes, you should be able to hear me now. Yes, you can hear me now. I can hear myself talking now, yeah. The most annoying teacher voice. Here we go.
You ready?
Okay, I am ready. As ready as I can be. Okay, my name is Pat Link. I'm next night with MakeFest. Come see me on the first floor after, because let's go quickly into it. Okay, plastic goes back to 1862, but the first plastic was invented. And you can see plastic was actually a good material when it first was invented. We got rid of ivory, for example, made new cue balls out of it and stuff like that. So there was like a thing where we saw, yeah, I've got good things come, but when we looked at it, we went through Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and then we've got stuck at Plastic Age as a new thing. And that Plastic Age is literally just stuck and hasn't actually moved from there. Because the problem we have with that sort of plastic that we produce is when you look at the part where it comes to, we came to plastic about here, then we went to silicone, graphite, and all these new products we find, but they're getting less and less the new materials that we're finding that we're still plastic is such a big thing, because we can't cut plastic out of our lives as much as we think we can cut out of our lives with using plastic. Plastic waste that we produce, only 5% of that plastic waste that we have coming through here, loads goes to landfill and all, but only 5% sneaks off here somewhere to cycle back into the loop to actually get reused. But that's something we have to educate, get people to think that way, because it is still cheaper to get virgin fuel produced items something to do to the cost. So this one, schmutzig putzig, is actually German, so it means cute and dirty. Well, that is quite cute, but that actually floats in the ocean. That's what we actually have, the amount of plastic that we have out there, because that will never degrade, that toothbrush. So you can see here, these are sites where they actually have physical people actually taking those bottles, cleaning those out, and this is how it's ended. But we noticed something about the photograph, where that is taking that photograph, that's probably not a UK site, so due to health safety, because we'll have someone standing inside there. But surely that's a method which doesn't have to go, that has to go out to Far Eastern countries, where it says on the side, it's cut off. It goes to Indonesia, our 5% that I said before that gets recycled, so if we actually ship it abroad, so we're actually using, again, raw oil to actually transport us somewhere, so we're actually not putting that back into the actual product that we can do that from. And we look at the amount that we have, it works out about 8 metric tons per year. Looking at the jumping forward to 30 years, if we jump that forward, it goes to 50 years where they say there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish, but if we only jump forward 30 years, they reckon it's going to double. By 2050, when we move to that half, it's quadrupled. So the number don't stack up, it doesn't just go double, treble, but it actually goes bigger jumps because we're doing nothing at the moment. Because this is still happening, so we still have things like these buds, they do not degrade. Loads of people use them. You can cut them completely out of your life. It is possible to cut plastic out. Now, I have tried this, and I felt when I tried to do this, cutting as much plastic as I could out of mine, slide here over, like finding Wally. That's how I felt when I stood in the shop looking. I'm gluten-free. Where everything is wrapped in plastic. So what can I do with that plastic that I use from it? Because obviously, dietary-wise, I need to use that. So I looked at different ways and different things that we could do. So I actually went to that part. I was in the supermarket, going down the aisles, looking what can I reduce, what can I take out, looking at all those things. But it gets you to that point, that really, really breaking point, where I looked at not just that it was going down the aisle, picking every packet up, looking at every packet. Some manufacturers don't even write on the packet what's on the packet. This is recyclable. What's recyclable? Find out with your local council. Local council doesn't tell you. That's how you feel when you ask your local council. I can't. I spent £300 more. I spent about 3 hours more in the shop. I'm really irritated now, and guess what? I still don't know what I can recycle. So then I woke up 5:30 as I do for school, and then I started writing down every single thing that I just touched from the moment of getting up. I went through my head and I wrote down what I touched in plastic. And I started, the list is going to come about. It started with an alarm clock, it was the mattress, it was the pillow, it was toothpaste, it was the light switch, because the light switch got electrics inside. Then by the time I got into the shower, I had the shower curtain that I pulled over. I used all my shower things. My beard needs grooming every day, so I washed my beard, put it in a plastic tube. I had to use the hairdryer, it's made from plastic, but I used that over and over again. The comb I used was made from plastic, walked down the stairs. Carpet was wool, so I got away with that, but then obviously it had all that plastic added together. So to get away from this, there is small things we can all do. We can all make small little steps. We can change things. I've started reading a book, not to plug the book, but it talks about how you actually cut plastic out. Things that come up, you can have recycled items. They don't need to be recycled, but you just don't reuse the bag. Change the way you actually buy items, refuse something at the till when you do that. In Germany, I know you can do that quite a little bit, but if we start in the UK, the same thing, just refuse it at the till. So if the product can't be recycled, reused, remade or something like that, we should just stop, refuse it, don't take it. It has to be something that can actually fit back into the economy, that we actually use it. So what I had to do with that, obviously that is not something, as adults we look at a bit more logic, but I thought we have to train young minds to do that. That's why I set up the makerspace. That's why I set up in school, we look at sustainability. And if you have a spare moment, you can shed some time, come upstairs, or just take our QR code, have a look at it. We're setting the crowd from them because we want to actually make sustainability as part of the curriculum. Government talks about it, but they don't do enough about it. We need to be really driven that. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you very much. Last up, hopefully, we should have Ronnie Hughes. So Ronnie does all sorts of stuff. You may or may not have heard of him yet, but he's really involved in local communities, especially in North Liverpool. And he does really interesting tours and walks and stuff. And they can find you at A Sense of Place, that's it. So today he's going to be talking slightly, we're taking a step back from the day-to-day of using plastic and replacing plastic with other materials, and we're thinking more about communities and the sustainability and the utopian visions we could have and how we can make those happen ourselves. So over to you, Ronnie. Oh yeah, okay. There you go.
Okay. All right. Okay, I've been thinking a lot about Utopia. You might wonder why, as it's got a fairly bad name. But we're living in a kind of Tower of Babel, particularly in here today, but this is a nice Babel. But we often live in the Babel of we've ruined our ecology, our politicians are utterly unable to respond to it, and we're left hoping some saviour will come from the sky and make things okay for us. I don't think they will, and I think it's dangerous when they do. They come up with huge ideas. This is the vision of Liverpool from 1948, which thankfully didn't come to pass. You'll see the 7 graces that we were going to have. But the huge visions actually want to make us all the same, make us different. We get rid of good things in the making of new things. We currently live in a city that's basically governed for the good of property developers, and I think that needs to change well before 2049, at which point I'll be 95. We ruin things that are beautiful. This is Eldon Grove, which is just off Scotland Road, right next to what I still call the new tunnel. But I think we need to fix things like that and fix things ourselves. That's my thing. Little utopias we can make ourselves so that we have a choice of utopian places to live. If you want to live in Port Sunlight, great, go and live in Port Sunlight. But if you want to live in somewhere different, then I think we need to be keying into the little spark we all have in us, which is, how could life be better? What would you do to make life better? Not perfect, because that was the problem with the old utopias. It tried to make perfect places out of imperfect beings. I want to tell you the story of one. This is the Granby Winter Garden, as we first found it. We were restoring 200 houses, the community of us, some of us are here, in Granby, and two of them were just too expensive and too wrecked by years of racism and municipal neglect to do again. So we made a winter garden like you would. We've got trees planted, a glass roof. The community drove it. They were determined to have it. I'm a real housing purist, and I took some persuading as part of the community to even have it. But it opened this spring, and I stood there at the opening. They asked me to take these photographs like I usually do. And I thought, if this isn't a utopia, I don't know what is. Something that the local community got hold of, controlled, insisted on, did the politics, found the money, £450,000, it's possible, and they built it and they opened it, and you can visit every Tuesday, every Saturday, every street market, and it's not the only one. We are surrounded in this city by little utopias people have made themselves. This is a group of us sitting in Home Baked 2 years ago talking about Kitty's Laundrette. This is Granby Street Market. Granby is a mixture of utopias. We always wanted to move it out onto Granby Street. It is now. It's probably the best street market in Liverpool. It's changing things. It's not only providing places for people to go, it's changing the economy of the place. This is the Rala, an ignored place over all those walls in Kirkdale that you think's full of railways. It's a natural garden. It is Liverpool's secret garden. It's been maturing for years. No one can even get in, except a few of us have been over the wall. We can make the future of Liverpool ourselves. In fact, we've got to. We can't rely on the big politicians, as I've said, and we've got to fix things in the way that everybody here is talking about fixing things pretty quickly. We haven't got till 2049. Most wise thinking now is that we've got 10 years. We have got to fix things now, and we fixed things in Granby by being disobedient. We did not wait for permission. We actually we guerrilla gardened, and when it was necessary, when we went on site, we guerrilla built. You just have to do this. We're in a city of boss politics, and it has to stop. There has to be good politics, because I would like to rebuild, for one, the overhead railway. But we can't rely on the boss politics. The more we do ourselves, if we have a city full of little utopias everywhere, places like the Winter Garden that we've made ourselves, here's the people who did it, it's to their credit, then we can actually save the world. Because if you add Berlin and Barcelona and Amsterdam and all of the other places to Liverpool, we can sort it. They're the people who can sort it, not the boss politicians. Take the lid off your imagination while you're here today, and we can change the world. And come and visit us Tuesdays, Saturdays, Granby Winter Garden. That's it.
Amazing, thank you very much. That was really cool. Mic-wise, are we just passing this around, or are we doing... 3 mics. Cool.
Hello, hello, hello.
There you go. So, you may have to spare a bit. So we've got 3. You're going to keep one.
Yep, I can keep one, and
So there'll be 2
we can pass this around as well.
There'll be 2 for these.
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
That's really great. Thank you very much. Thanks to Dan, the sound man, and the rest of the sound crew. These have been the poor guinea pigs who've had to test out the sound in the first session. But you may have noticed me frantically scribbling notes because I thought these were fascinating. I guess starting off with like the topic of recycling and stuff like that. I mean, have you seen any great examples of how we incentivize recycling? Because I know we've talked about like making lots of small changes, and it seems like that's probably one of the only ways this might work. But how do we try and incentivize that? I don't know whether you want to.
Yeah, well, I've got a philosophy on this, which is about making it really interesting and engaging. So what we try and do with plastic is make it really hands-on and something that you can come along and you can do yourself, and to have all of the wider questions about recycling and about material consumption come later, out of the curiosity that we build up from the goodwill of having done something interesting. So that's how I prefer to go about it. Also, it's more fun for me to deliver that sort of thing. So like last week at Africa Oye, we had a shredder, and people were shredding plastic on site, and we had an injection moulder. So we're doing it in person, letting people get involved, and then we let the rest of the conversation go from there.
And what, just so that, because some people might not have seen, what do you do with that plastic once you've shredded it and melted it?
Well, we're making some proof of concept at the moment. So this is a partial fill. It's imperfectly perfect. But so we make tiles and we make coasters. We make little clothes pegs and plant pots. So we're constantly trying to find out new things that we can make, and that we can invite other people to make from their own plastic. So it's not us as a recycler, it's you as a recycler.
I think it was Jackie maybe that made some earrings out of the stuff. In fact, they are being modelled right here. Amazing. And you can get some really beautiful patterns. I know there's a makerspace that their stand is just over there, which does Liverpool. And we've been experimenting with melting different colours of the plastic. So our 3D prints, you can melt down the plastic from spare 3D prints or from support structure or the waste, and make some really beautiful gradients of colours, and it looks almost like stained glass or something. So that's an interesting idea, making it something that you'd want to make stuff out of the byproducts, or out of the stuff you recycled. Did you have any ideas of other ways of trying to incentivize people? Because you were saying you're surrounded by all these plastic things in the morning. Like how
you are. I've done it with students in school to make them just that more visible of what they actually use. You know, not just take the bottle because it's convenient that it's in ready-made in the plastic bottle, but they're just going to throw it away, sort of thing. Like to think twice about, picking something up and going, I can actually go with it this way. And because the plastic we use in school, we're actually making products from it, so we shred it down to actually make. So what Arthur does, the more like sort of experimenting with it. What I've got set projects that we're going to do, and we actually make it. So the kids actually take something away, and they have something go, that's made from something recycled. So that's made from recycled plastic. So they see it as more like, I always class it as it's the new gold. That's what it's going to be. So when oil prices go to a really ridiculous thing, they will tumble and go, but plastic will be that what holds its price then, because we're going to have an infinite amount to use. And we need to use it, otherwise it's going to build up and build up and build up. We have to change a mindset so people start thinking that way. Because I can remember for me about this tour in Germany, we've always recycled. The incentive was you got money for it. You brought recycling, you got money for it. Only pennies for the amount that you brought in. But government's not going to put pennies onto because they're not going to do that. But if we, like Arthur said, make something and people take something away and see actually something from it, like the coasters, tiles. People up in our store have been talking about, can you make tiles, can you make bricks out of this? Your imagination is the limit, probably, what you can make with plastic. If you construct it in a proper manner, it's actually quite sturdy. We've actually, PET bottles, we made rope from that. You can actually physically pull yourself up onto it and hold onto it, so it is strong. And that will never rot,
Interesting. Anybody got any questions or comments or anything? Feel free to shout out or put your hands up if you do. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's the first time I've been to anything like this before. But it's interesting about making. Yeah. Given that we live in a society that produces stuff all the time in a particular way for a particular reason, and that is to make profit, not for social good. And I noticed that all these ideas, they're all great ideas, particularly the Granby idea. It's all to make things efficient and more green and socially better without affecting the system, the economic system, which does things in a particular way. And I'm not sure that's possible. It sounds great, but the system's always going to, I'll make some money out of this. Whatever's the easiest way, I'll slip that. That doesn't matter. So it's like lots of things come on the market, but all the good social stuff never gets on the market until there's a wall of money going behind it, because it's going to make a profit, not because it's going to be socially good. I'll never forget listening to a Radio 4 program. It was called The Business World or something. And right at the end of the show, this fella had a great invention, for a socially good invention. And the lad at the end of the show said, well, that'd be great. When it becomes on the market, we'll get it there. In other words, it had to be marketable, not useful, not socially useful. So that's a big problem for me now. This is a general point I'm making, Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, interesting one. That you're right that it's profitable, but if you start at a young age, you have a year 11 who comes to you, you make something from the plastic, he takes something home, and it's really nice. We're making out of old plastic bags. We're making phone cases, just like a pouch where you slide them into it, sewn together with a plastic bottle, and they look really nice. They're not what they say. They call it rubbish gold because it looks gold, but it's made from rubbish. And so if I change that mindset of that 11-year-old, I am hoping that when he becomes that adult, that he walks out there, he's going to think twice about how he's going to bring his kids up, what he's going to do, and the next thing. I've got upstairs 4 year 12s who are here. Absolutely amazing how they jumped onto the whole making thing of it and seen that, and they looked at the whole thing. Yes, we can make a change, but it takes a small. It's a mindset that we need to change. It's right with the profit. The profit is the people at the top. And like the Utopia was said before, something we can't influence. We can only influence if we take the action.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I'd like to, in answering that, I'd like to use Arthur's phrase of a circular economy, because Granby, Home Baked, Kirsten from Makers here, lots of these little utopias everywhere that I'm talking about are socialism. They're socialism in absolute action. What we're doing is we are actually making real things, from houses to pies to stuff that you can use in your life, and delivering them between the businesses with bikes from Peloton. And all of that money stays in Liverpool. We pay people. Home Baked, for example, now employ 19 people. They put 161,000 in wages into the local economy. They turn over another 100,000, which they take out of the football club because they supply pies to the football club. None of these businesses have shareholders. They're cooperatively owned by the people who work in them and run them. And that money stays in Liverpool. The big thing about going to market is the money leaves Liverpool. It goes to shareholders, God knows where, and we're left with what's left. So I think we are practical socialism. We do need to do it bigger than that. And I think a huge part of the answer for my own visions of the future, which I write about on my blog, A Sense of Place, is that the City Council starts, as it has done already, to insource the things it used to outsource. We brought the bins back in. We need the buses, we need the trains, we need the ferries, we need the tunnel, we need the energy. If we can get them back in and run them ourselves, then they enter the circular economy that Granby and Home Baked and Make and all of the rest have already got going. The big hope for me is that we've actually already started building Utopia here. We're making the models. The models are literally being made all over this building now. We don't have to despair. We don't have to tumble into dystopia. I think we're making the future now.
It's interesting as well, like what you're talking about. A lot of times people will talk about devolution and like of government, so more decision making at a local level or various different levels. But I like the idea of like, you don't have to wait for that to happen. You don't have to wait for the official power to be handed to you to devolve the ideas so you can manage it yourself. Just do it. And when you were talking about all these little secret utopias, I started writing them down, and I was like, oh yeah, the Ralla as well, and then Home Baked, and then you mentioned them all. So it does work, and they are fantastic examples of like people going, well, you can do that thing of interfacing. Yes, there's obviously a sort of machinery, a system here of how economy works and economies of scale with these large organisations and chains and things like that, but you can interface with that. You can be a Home Baked, putting money into the local economy, employing local people, and it still works.
People criticise us and say that we can't go to scale. I don't think that's always true. I think that depends what the business is actually making. Nobody thought the tiny little bakery opposite to the football ground could ever be supplying the whole of that new stand, but it does. But also, some of these businesses don't want to go to scale. They're about the community and about the place that they're in, and that we actually like knowing the name of everybody that we work with. I think that's part of the choice. You don't have to prove that you're a proper business by buying the BMWs, renting the expensive office, and putting yourself into debt. You can do it yourself.
I was going to ask this idea of scale, and how does that interface with like all of these beautiful spaces like the Winter Gardens, the Ralla, like lots of these small community spaces that are almost like, the reason they're so nice is because they're like secret, like little gardens, but at the same time you want people to come and enjoy them, and you want to expand so that more people have the opportunity to experience it. How do you balance that? How do you open it up to the community without it becoming like a tragedy of the commons situation where suddenly it's packed and the magic has gone? Where do you draw that line?
It's an art as much as it's a science, is the truth. But I think the way I've seen it actually working is a federation. So that, you know, one of us doesn't try and expand into bikes and into food and into engineering, etc., etc. We actually employ each other to do that. And so the combination, and I've seen this happen a lot of times. Have I gone? No, I'm still here. No, I've seen this happen a lot. You know, we've run a lot of events where somebody supplies the pies, somebody does the guided tour, etc. All that comes together, and people don't know that the event is being put on by 7 or 8 different organisations, but it is. I often feel in my own life going around working with all of these people, there are about 200 people at the moment running Liverpool, really. And there's not much we couldn't put on. Any one of us is too small to do it. All of us together can.
Anything else from the other two to add? Because I know we've got to finish soon, but...
a quick thing just sprang to mind there, and it might be too vague to be useful, but I was just thinking, like, inspiration scales. So the stories that Ronnie's telling here, hopefully that can inspire other communities to build their own spaces. So it's not like everybody's going to Granby to the Winter Garden. I mean, that's primarily by them, for them, welcoming other people. But hopefully that inspires other communities to make their own spaces, and that's scalable.
And there's probably a space there for somebody to produce almost like flat pack democracy, like the book. I don't know whether any of you've probably read this. So like trying to tell you how to set up your own like local democracy and stuff. Like, so maybe sharing, rather than sharing the actual outputs, like hoping that the whole of Liverpool will come and use your garden. It's like, well, here's 10 ways to set up your own local community garden because there's loads of space. And empowering people to do it for themselves. Any other points from anybody else? No? Cool. Well, thank you. Oh! The question was, what do you think the biggest barriers are to people coming together and cooperating, and how do we overcome them?
From experience, I think it would be fair to say what we've found is you have to realise that everybody's different. So don't immediately set up a committee. Otherwise you bore people out of doing anything. You have to have a look at what it is you want to do and find things for people to do. You know, it isn't necessarily making the pies. It might be somebody being nice to people on the front desk. It might be... In Granby, I've always said the whole thing wouldn't have happened except for the street market. That was going well before they asked me to get involved. But it was a stroke of utter genius because, you know, the first one I went to, which it turned out I think probably was the first one, I thought I'd stumbled in on a domestic party. It was half a dozen tables out in Cairn Street, and I wasn't sure whether I could go in or not. I did go in, and 10 years later I'm still there. But everybody could do that. You could bring out what they wanted, sell what they wanted. There were other people to help. There was drinks to make, all stuff to do. Everybody could get involved. And a few of us who really like politics and really like all of that plotting that goes on could do it. So that was one thing. And the other thing was get people used to the idea that you don't have to agree on anything. And also you don't have to ask permission for everything. Do what you can as quick as you can and make it into a real thing. Much like everybody around here, the quicker you can get to a prototype of whatever you're making, you can find out whether you like making it and whether the idea's got anywhere to go.
Yeah, 'cause that's why I was just going to hinge on that point, like with Makerspace, you know, that's what you do. You facilitate something, you actually... You know, there is no, I'm in charge, you're in charge, you come, you have an idea, you're in charge because you've got the idea. Someone's there to, like, if you come unstuck, to help you and guide you, or come up, give you a suggestion, oh, I've done that, and, you know, this has happened, you know, to save you a pitfall maybe or something like that, you know. But it's, I think, on those parts, when there's no one in charge, when something goes wrong, it's not a big dilemma then or something like that. It's easy to overcome that, you know. And then learn from that and move on from that, you know. It becomes successful by itself then, when it's ungoverned.
Yeah, just by giving people, telling people, look, you all own this space, you can run it. Like they're trying to show them that there aren't any barriers to them participating, and then they'll take on the responsibility themselves. Anything?
Yeah. Just my immediate thought on that was, so you talk about groups, but for me I like to think about, well, what can I control in that? And for me, self-awareness is the bit that I find helps working in groups. The more that you know yourself, that helps interaction. So the more that everyone in the group knows where they're at, what they want, and can communicate that to me is like the really useful trait.
Final question.
So specifically listening to Pat saying about how makespaces can do stuff, and looking at the sort of businesses that people are talking about here, which are fairly low-tech things and that sort of thing. How can local socialist type businesses move into areas like coming up with new drugs or that sort of thing, which are sort of seriously under the control of people who are not doing the best job with them? How could that be done at a local level, or something you could get involved with?
Not that we want you to solve the pharmaceutical industry in 5 minutes. Yeah, how do you take the step, or is it possible for local, as you say, like sort of socialist styles, small scale stuff to start impacting these bigger, much harder to break into areas?
Obviously, I would say yes. I think when you start looking at drugs, you're looking at the chemical industry, and actually everything in the chemical industry at some point is invented by somebody at a workbench. So there's nothing there that can't be done. Obviously, the big thing that gets aspirin into every one of our bathroom cabinets is a whole huge interlocking industry of other things. So I have to, I'm at university now, so I learned to do this thing called deconstruct, which is actually deconstruct, well, why do we need all of these things? I'm not saying we don't need drugs, because we do. They've saved thousands, millions of people's lives. But do we need all of them brought to us in the ways that they are, or are there things we can make ourselves? So I think there have to be things we can make ourselves, but I think there have to be things we can get hold of. And obviously, we already had hold of the National Health Service to do all of these things. So somewhere down the line, you have to have very big things, like very big civil engineering, very big drug making, I think needs to be done. And at that level, you are looking at some form of, as I said when I was talking, some form of in-sourced, what we used to outsource. So I don't see why. Part of the problem why drugs are so expensive is that we have to pay the shareholders of the drug companies. I don't think that, in the usual way of, like, you look at a meal of pasta and it's probably cost about 40p to make and you're expected to pay 25 quid for it, then it's the same with drugs. I think if we could obviously we need big politics to stop what's happening to the NHS, then bring it back, but also bring it back to more local control. So there's a whole seminar on that one, really. But I don't think we should immediately say it's nothing to do with us and there's nothing we can do about it.
Because we go back to plastic, that was an Englishman who invented plastic. So, a lot of creation and making stuff happens in this country, happens this part of Europe where it happens, Western Europe where it gets outsourced and to cheaper places, and that's where it's quite driven with that. That's why I think it's going to be hard for, like we said, with the pharmaceutical side of it, because a lot of it comes from far away as well. When it's made, nothing's made locally anymore. Places close down locally made because they're driven by taxes and by all sorts of other things come to it. I used to run a business, so I know what it's like. You're taxed for everything through the roof, and sometimes you wonder, what for? I don't even use it. Oh, you're still paying a tax for it. Is that sort of thing, They don't give you something back for, if you put something into the community, into that society sort of thing. But then again, like I said, that's a mindset you have to change, because if we have youngsters growing up thinking that way, they will have to change.
And maybe one of the other things is working out what you could do instead of the whatever pills. Obviously, there's some things, taking medicine as the example. So there's always been various different alternative therapies, or like group therapy. I know there's loads of sort of fairly grassroots, interesting community groups and things that I've through Awesome Liverpool like found out about and funded even, of them bringing people together to do talking therapy or art therapy or things like that, which maybe is another way in without you having all of the baggage and overhead of R&D departments and shareholders and regulations and whatever. It's more of a local helping everybody. Just not that it could replace these sorts of things, but it could maybe be one way in. Thank you very much, everybody. That's been really interesting. Thanks to our speakers. We had Arthur and Pat and Ronnie. A big round of applause. And that was our session on sustainability in the city. So after lunch at 2 o'clock, we're going to be back and talking about medicine and longevity. So come back for that. And then after that, we've got society and governance with a couple of local councillors and a load of other people, which will be really cool, including Hayley, who's hiding behind the desk over there. And at the end of the day, we'll be talking about transportation and what that will look like in 2049. So come back at 2 o'clock for medicine and longevity.